guys, welcome to class. Hopefully you've had a couple minutes to try Tuesday's warm-up. We're going to go over the answers real quick. So make sure you have chosen red ink on your iPad. And as we go over these, make sure you fix and correct anything that you got wrong, or if you didn't finish yet, no problem, finish with your red ink. All right, so these problems focus on order of operations. So on number 1, remember the fraction bar is a grouping symbol, so it groups the numerator and it groups the denominator. And so then we are going to subtract in the numerator, which gives us 35, and add in the denominator, which gives us 7. And then the fraction bar means division, so 35 divided by 7 is 5 as our final answer. On number 2, first comes parentheses, so we have 12 plus 5 times 2 when we subtract there. Now this is one that always messes people up. In fact, some of you might have noticed on past assignments that you've messed this up. So here it is tempting to add the 12 and the 5 first, but we have addition and we have multiplication, and multiplication comes before addition. So I first need to multiply 5 times 2 and then add the 12 because multiplication comes before addition. All right, on the next one, again, I have parentheses first. Now I have division and addition, so I'm going to do the division first. 60 divided by 20 is 3, and 3 plus 14 is 17 as my final answer. And the last one, I have division and I have multiplication. So remember, I can just work from left to right, just like I read a book. So 100 divided by 25 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And 8 divided by 8 is 1. All right, so that's all for our warm-up today. Next, make sure you have turned in your multiplying and dividing integers worksheet into Shobi. If you forgot to turn it in, please turn it in right now. And then go ahead and open up that document in Notability, your multiplying and dividing integers, because we are going to grade it real quick next. Alrighty, as we grade this worksheet here, make sure that you stay on that red ink in Notability. Remember, star if it's right, X if it's wrong. The first one that we're going to grade is number 6, and it should be -2. Remember, it must have a negative sign to be correct. If you forgot the negative sign, it would be incorrect. The next one we're going to grade is number 8. And it should be 400, positive 400. The next one we're going to grade is number 16, and it should be positive 140. Remember, star if it's right, X if it's wrong. Then you went down to this one where Sean was trying to solve the problem. And so the next one we're going to grade is number 18. And the correct answer there should be -15. So you were supposed to rework that problem. I'll go ahead and look at your work when I do the completion grade. You just need to make sure that you ended up with -15 as your final answer. All right, and then the last one we're going to grade is number 20, which you were to write a rule for the sign of the product of more than 2 integers, and you were to be detailed and specific. Now, I'll read you what I wrote. You don't need to have word for word what I wrote, but you need to have the gist of it. So I said when you multiply an even number of negative integers, the answer is always positive. But when you multiply an odd number of negative integers, the answer is always negative. And that was the pattern that you saw up above. So again, you do not need to have that word for word, but you should have the gist of that, that if there's an even number of negatives, it's positive, an odd number of negatives is negative. Star if it's right, X if it's wrong. If you are unsure if your answer is correct, please make a note next to it or a question mark or something, say, Miss Potler, I don't know if this is right, and I'll look at it when I grade yours because I understand that there might be some variation there. So if you're unsure, just put a question mark or write a little note to me But other than that, make sure that you put your accuracy score at the top of the page, what you got out of 5, and then turn this back into Shobi, into the multiplying and dividing integers folder. Put what you got out of 5 in the accuracy box and turn this right back into Shobi. All right, the next thing I'd like you to do is go to Shobi, and you should see a new folder there called Evaluating Expressions Class Practice. And I'd like you to take that worksheet and you're going to move it to Notability. You can put it in your Math Notes section because we're going to work on this in class. You will turn this back in at the end of class, but it won't be homework because we will work on it in class. So you're moving this Evaluating Expressions Class Practice to Notability in the Math Notes section. All right, then what I would like you to do is you're going to take the next 5 to 10 minutes to work on this worksheet. Make sure on number 1 through 6 that you show your work, and then make sure on 7 through 10 that you write a good explanation. It could be a complete sentence or a complete thought, but make sure you really explain your answer. When you finish this, you may then leave this in Notability for now, and you're going to go back to Shobi, and you are going to get the 1.1 through 1.6 review packet and move that to Notability. That goes in Math Homework Unit 1 because that's going to be your homework tonight. And so while you're waiting for the rest of your classmates to finish, you are welcome to start working on that. In about 5 to 10 minutes, the sub is going to continue to play this video where I will go over the answers to number 1 through 10 on this page. So you're working on this first. If you finish this before the rest of your classmates, you may start working on the 1.1 through 1.6 review. So you may start working now. Alrighty. Wherever you are right now, if you started working on the 1.1 through 1.6 review, I'd like you to stop working on that right now, and please go back to this Evaluating Expressions practice. So everyone should have this Evaluating Expressions practice open. I'd like you to switch to red ink, and we're going to go over this just like we do a warm-up. So this is different than a homework assignment where you're marking something right or wrong. We're going to go over this like a warm-up, which means if you got something wrong, I want you to fix it with your red colored ink. So anything you got wrong, you are going to fix. And then once we finish going over this, you will turn this in, but you should have every problem correct because you either got it correct the first time or you fixed it once we went over it. So let's take a look at number 1. We are going to evaluate the expression when x equals -7. So on number 1, we have the opposite of x. Well, if x is -7, remember then the opposite would be +7. So we'd have 7 plus 6, which is just +13. On number 2, we have those absolute value bars. So we're going to first plug in what x is. We have the absolute value of -7. Well, -7 is 7 places from 0. So the absolute value of -7 is 7, and 7 minus 3 is 4. On number 3, remember when there's not an operation there, we know it's multiplication. So I'm going to write this as 4 times the absolute value of -7. Again, those absolute value bars are a grouping symbol, which means that's what we need to do first. I'm going to take the absolute value of -7, and it is +7. And then 4 times 7 is +28. On number 4, I have 10 plus the opposite of x. If x is -7, the opposite is +7, and so this would be +17. Number 5, we have 8 times the opposite of x. Again, if x is -7, the opposite is +7. And then 8 times 7 is 56. And the last one, we have 11 minus the absolute value of negative 7. Again, we have to take the absolute value first, so the absolute value of negative 7 is positive 7, and 11 minus 7 is positive 4. So again, if you got any of those wrong, make sure you fix them. And next we're going to go over number 7 through 10. All right, let's go over number 7. So number 7 asks to explain why the absolute value of negative 7 equals 7. So I think one of the easiest ways to approach this is to use the definition of absolute value. So I'm going to say absolute value is the distance a number is from 0 on the number line, and distance is always positive. Negative 7 is 7 places from 0. Therefore, the absolute value is positive 7. Again, you don't need to have that exactly word for word, but you need to identify that we're talking about the distance something is from 0 and that distance is always positive. All right, number 8 asks to explain why the absolute value of 7 is positive 7. Okay, so really I'm going to start my first sentence the exact same way. Absolute value is the distance a number is from 0 on the number line, and distance is always positive. 7 is 7 places from 0, and therefore the absolute value is positive 7. So again, negative 7 and positive 7 are both 7 places from 0, and so therefore for both of them, the absolute value is 7. So again, if you don't have what I have, just go ahead and fix it with red pen, add to your answer if you want, but make sure you explain what absolute value is, and therefore why the answer is always positive 7. All right, on number 9, we've moved into opposite. So explain why the opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. Again, I think it's easiest to start with the definition of what an opposite is. So I'm going to say opposites are two numbers with the same absolute value but different signs. Negative 7 and 7 have the same absolute value but different signs, and therefore that's why they would be opposites. All right, and then for the last one, it's just the opposite. Explain why the opposite of 7 is negative 7. And so again, we had that definition up above. Opposites are two numbers with the same absolute value but different signs. You could say that again, or I can say 7 and negative 7 have the same absolute value, but if you have positive 7, then the opposite would need the different sign and be negative 7. Again, there's many ways to say this. You don't need to have exactly word for word what I have, but you should have the gist of what I have. And again, the easiest way is to use those definitions of what absolute value and opposites are. All right, so once you get these fixed and corrected, I would like for you to turn this back into Shobi. It goes into the Evaluating Expressions class practice folder. And again, you should have all the answers correct right now because you are fixing them as we went over them. So you're going to turn this back in to Shobi into the Evaluating Expressions class practice. All right, and then as soon as you turn that in, you should either start or continue working on the 1.1 through 1.6 review. This is located in Shobi. You will move it to Notability into the Math Homework Unit 1, and you should have some time right now to get started on it, and then whatever you don't finish is your homework. We do have a quiz tomorrow, and this is a great review to practice before the quiz. So all of the things that are in this packet will show up on your quiz tomorrow. You should use your notes to help you fill this out if there's any place that you get stuck on. And just like always, make sure you show your work. All right, guys, good work today. Have an awesome day.